As far as politics, what is your prior experience and how did you want to become a congressman?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of first got involved in politics actually back in 2008. So at that time, I was going to college at Indiana University. I actually grew up here in Northwest Ohio, in Holland, Ohio, right outside of Toledo, but I was going to college at Indiana University. And, during 2008, we had the financial crisis. And unfortunately, it caused my father to lose his job and my family lost their health insurance. And because of that, my mom, as a woman with a pre-existing condition before the Affordable Care Act passed, found it almost impossible for her to afford an individualized insurance plan. So right around that time in 2008, I started hearing about Barack Obama, who was running for president. And I actually started volunteering for his campaign on Indiana University's campus. So I became a student volunteer and I was registering students, getting people involved, taking people to meetings. And the movement that we created on Indiana University's campus actually led to us flipping the state of Indiana from red to blue for the first time in nearly 50 years. And, of course, Barack Obama won that election. He passed the Affordable Care Act. And that allowed my mom to afford an individualized insurance plan and actually start her own small business, which she still runs today. So, I realized how just small actions of getting involved, of helping people register to vote can really create a change for millions of Americans and really create a positive opportunity. So, that's how I got my start in politics. After that, I moved out to Southern California. I worked for a tech startup out there, but I was involved in politics there as well. I was working on local city council races and congressional races. And most recently, I was involved as a field organizer on a race in California's 25th district. And we actually flipped a seat from red to blue there as well. And that was a phenomenal experience to be a part of. And, after that race, I started to think a lot about my hometown here in Toledo. And, I wanted to move back. I wanted to kind of start a family here. This is a place that I love, that I've always felt super connected with. So I got back here and I wanted to continue to be involved in politics here in Northwest Ohio. And, I started working with the Young Democrats of Lucas County and the Young Democrats of Wood County, as well as getting involved with the advocates of Clean Lake Erie. And, I was talking to some people and I was like, hey, who's running against Bob Latta? Because, I just came off of a congressional race. I want to help out on this congressional race. And I was really surprised to learn that no one at the time had really stepped up to run. And so with some encouragement from the community, a lot of people were like, hey, Nick, you've worked on congressional races. Why don't you do it? And I've never been one to back down from a challenge. And I think it's extremely important to run strong races all throughout the state. So I decided to jump into the ring. And that's where we're at today. We've gotten a ton of support from the community. And we've really built a strong team, a strong campaign. And I'm excited to take this movement forward to November.
So those other seats that you flipped, it took a lot of momentum. So do you believe you have enough momentum here in this area to be able to flip that seat?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's true, Jaden. It really is all about creating a movement, and I do think that we've really started that here in this area. We've seen our campaign is down in Bowling Green, so that's where we're headquartered, and we've seen a ton of really excitement and momentum from Bowling Green State University and the students down there. I think that they're really excited to create some change. They get really excited about things like gun control and protecting the environment. And these are things that our campaign has really pushed to the forefront. And that excites a lot of individuals. Here in Northwest Ohio, during the primary, we saw really kind of boosted Democratic turnout in a lot of areas that we know that we're going to need to win. And we're really excited about that, especially because it was an all mail-in primary. So to see that even though it was all mail-in, people still decided to vote and people were still really energetic and excited about our campaign, that bodes really well for us in November. And we think we can just continue that momentum and continue to build.
So it was a all mail-in primary. So do you believe that it was successfully carried out on the state's part?
Yeah, I don't agree with everything that Governor Mike DeWine has put into place, but in regards to how he has handled this coronavirus epidemic, I have to give him really high remarks and a fantastic report card. I think it's important that we delayed in-person voting on March 17th and ultimately canceled all in-person voting because I do think that it was for the best. It was, the safest way to carry out an election at this time. And I think the Secretary of State and really the Board of Elections throughout all the counties that are in our district did a phenomenal job of really ensuring people that, if you wanted to vote, you could vote, that they really sent out information to help people learn how to vote by mail. I know that was something that our campaign was really trying to focus in on was provide videos and informational graphics for people to learn how to vote by mail. And, I think for the first time ever doing this, I do think that it went really well. I mean, there were some stories that I heard where, people reached out to our campaign and were like, hey, we haven't gotten our mail-in ballot yet, or, it just came. Do you think it will get in by, the time that we're supposed to vote? And I think that they did a good job of opening up the Board of Elections. So if you did want to go vote in person, if you didn't receive your absentee ballot, you could. I think that our state was very flexible, and I hope that we're able to, use what we've learned from this mail-in ballot process and, utilize that in November, because I do think that that's going to be an extremely important part for the, general election in November throughout the entire country. I hope that a lot of states really move to a robust mail-in ballot procedure, because I think that would be extremely important to ensure the health and safety for all the voters.
People were voting from home because of the coronavirus. So what has the COVID-19 pandemic, what was the impact it had on your campaign?
Yeah, of course. You talk about momentum. We had a ton of volunteers, and they were going out and they were knocking on doors, and we were holding large scale town halls and rallies. Of course, we can't do that anymore. And that was a huge advantage for our campaign, because that is kind of like how a grassroots movement builds momentum. But with that being said, we were able to transition those volunteers to start doing phone banks. So, they would be at home and they would be calling people on the phone. We would do letter writing campaigns. So people would write letters and send those out. And then, we also just transitioned into a lot of digital stuff. So now we do digital democracy town halls every Monday at 5 p.m. on my Facebook page. We just go live on the Facebook page, take questions so that we can continue to stay engaged with the community. And, like I kind of mentioned before, we're trying to really ensure that we can offer as many resources as possible for people in this time, because I think a lot of people have a lot of questions. They're very concerned with what's going on. So, on our website at nickrubando.com, we have a whole page dedicated to COVID-19 resources. So if you want to, learn how to file for unemployment, or fill out a PPP loan, or if you want educational programs for children who are at home who are no longer, getting to go to school, you can find that information on our website, as well as information for local food banks. Because we just want to ensure that everyone feels safe, feels healthy, and has the resources that they need right now, as we kind of transition into a new kind of campaign.
So as far as the federal response to the coronavirus pandemic, are you proud of that response? And if you were in their position, what would you do differently?
Yeah, I think that's an important question, because there has been a lot that has been done, and I think it's extremely important, especially how Democrats have pushed for an extra $600 for people who are filing for unemployment that comes from the federal government, as well as expanded unemployment. So people who are self-employed, or like employed as an Uber Eats driver, or an Uber driver, or a Lyft driver, a gig economy worker, now they can file for unemployment where normally they would not have been able to file for unemployment. So I think those kind of things are extremely important, as well as the PPP information that have come out, these are the small business loans that you can apply for. I think that these have really helped people, but I do believe that we need more social safety net programs and more really relief programs to come out. So I don't think that we can stop here. I think that we need to ensure that we continue to help individuals, because we just saw that 26 million Americans are filing for unemployment. Those are huge numbers, and they're going to have really large ramifications on our economy. So we need to continue to push forward for some of these relief packages. I mentioned a little bit before, but I think if we push forward some of these relief packages, we also need to ensure that we're having strong vote by mail programs in place for all the states. So I think that we can offer federal money to every state to help them build a vote by mail program if they don't already have one in place. Because again, November, I think that that's going to be an extremely important piece to how we all vote.
So as far as the Oval Office response, do you think that we were early enough in our response, that we had the right timing, the right planning to be successful in the coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And what I would say to that is, or South Korea and the United States had their very first confirmed case of coronavirus on the exact same day. Now, in South Korea, they invested very heavily in robust, wide-scale testing. So they made tests available to everybody very, very quickly to ensure that they could figure out exactly who had coronavirus. And because of that, they have seen their number of cases and their number of deaths really drop, and they haven't really had to implement some of the wide-scale stay-at-home orders that we've seen here in America that I think are really hurting the economy. So, I wish that we would have taken this more seriously. We had our federal government sending protective gear to China months before this pandemic really started. But had we have known, we could have kept that. Now we're seeing nurses and doctors, wearing trash bags when they're going in to, deal with some of these patients. So, I really wish that we would have taken this pandemic more seriously from the top, because I think that would have been extremely important. Again, I think Governor Mike DeWine did an amazing job. I think he really listens to doctors and listens to epidemiologists and had a good response in place. And we've seen that because of that, the death rate has not been as high in Ohio, and we've done a good job of really flattening the curve. And I wish that on a presidential level, we would have had the same response. I wish that he would have been responsible and really taken this seriously like other governors have done so far throughout the country.
So switching gears to the 2020 election, Democratic nominee Joe Biden has been accused of assault by Tara Reade. So as far as this, would you still give him the backing? And what do you think would be the process to go through what happened and come to a solution?
Yeah, I think that's an extremely important question, Jaden, especially because, we have to take very, very seriously any allegation of sexual misconduct. And, I applaud Joe Biden for, I think, doing that. I mean, I think that he has definitely asked news outlets to investigate this claim, and he has asked the National Archives to, release any complaint that was filed against him, if there is such a complaint. I think that he's really tried to ensure that, this is a very open process, and that these allegations aren't, shut down and that they're silenced. Because I think that's the most important part, is that we need to hear the allegations, we need to hear the story, and then, we'll let everyone judge for themselves. If we do investigative journalism work, like you do and like other journalists do, and we find these claims to be viable, then we can go from there. But I think that a lot of journalists have dug pretty deep into this. It just came out the other day that the Obama administration dug very deeply into Joe Biden's background when they were vetting him for vice president, and they didn't see any allegations of this sort come up. So, with that being said, I think it's incumbent upon the journalists and people here in America to really understand what these allegations are about and understand what's going on with this story, and then try to figure out, if we believe this is true, if we believe this is credible.
During the 2020 election, allegations came up against both candidates. So what would be your message to voters, and what should they think of this, and how should they react to this?
Yeah, I mean, sexual assault is unfortunately very real, and especially from powerful people. And I'm glad to hear that these allegations are surfacing, and that people are being held responsible um, for these allegation claims. And I think it's just extremely important to listen to what the candidates are saying. I think that there's been a very stark contrast between, one candidate who says, like, someone, claims sexual assault against them. They say, all right, please look into this case, investigate this case. I want the Senate archives to open up and release anything that may have come about. And then we have another candidate who, is actually trying to disgrace the women who are coming out against him, and using foul language against these women, and saying, that he never would have done it because they don't look pretty enough for him to sexually abuse. And I think that that is a very stark contrast that you can really judge for yourself, how these people are handling these allegations, and really who is being the bigger man in regards to these.
For those who are planning on voting for President Trump or voting for your opponent, Bob Latta, what would be your message to them, and how will you gain their vote?
Yeah. I would say this is Bob Latta has been in office for a long time, and, almost over 10 years. And I would say, look at your life. Like, is your life better right now than it was before? Do you feel that your economic circumstances have improved? Do you think that the quality of healthcare has improved? Do you think the quality of the water in Lake Erie has improved since these people have been in office? And if you don't, maybe it's time to try something new. I want to ensure that we have strong environmental protections, that we protect Lake Erie so we actually have clean water, so Lake Erie doesn't turn green every summer. I don't think that this is a Republican or a Democratic issue. I think this is a human issue. I think that this is something that we all need. I want to ensure that we expand healthcare coverage so that if you lose your job, you don't lose your health insurance. I don't think that this is a Democrat or a Republican issue. I think this is a human issue. We all need to have, good healthcare coverage. And I want to get big money out of Washington. You look at Bob Latta, he gets 75% of his dollars from corporate PACs. And it's the exact same corporations that he's supposed to be regulating in Congress. So just for a quick example, he sits on the Energy and Commerce Committee. So they're tasked with regulating the oil and gas industry and the pharmaceutical industry. And yet that's where he's getting the vast majority of his money from. And our state is top 2 in opioid related deaths. And yet our congressman is taking $100,000 from pharmaceutical companies each year to get reelected. So we wonder why there hasn't been a better response to the opioid epidemic. Well, our people in Congress are taking money from opioid manufacturers. So if you think this is wrong, if you think that we should get big money out of politics, if you think we should clean Lake Erie, if you think we should have better healthcare coverage, then vote for me, because these are things that I believe in, and these are things that I am pushing for.
So what are the additional issues that you will be pushing for during the general election?
Yeah. Again, those are kind of the top 3, but I think some other really important issues are really just having common sense gun reform. I think that there was a poll that was just taken here in Ohio that 90% of Ohioans support universal background checks for firearms. And this is a staggering number, especially because there has not really been any legislation to ensure that we can have common sense gun regulations. I'm not saying that I want to take anyone's guns away. My campaign manager and my compliance specialists, they're hunters, they're firearms owners. But I do think that we should not have guns in the hands of people who do not deserve them, who are not responsible enough to have them. So I think we should have common sense firearm safety implementations in place. Again, Bob Latta takes hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars really from the NRA. So he is in no position to put in common sense gun regulation as is much of Washington. So this is another issue that I feel particularly strongly about.
So finally, for the voters in District 5, what will be different after you are potentially elected?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing I hear most, Jaden, is when I go out into the district is that, they never see Bob Latta. He never holds any in-person town halls. He's never really here advocating for the community. And that is something that our campaign has put as our number one priority, is listening to the people in our community and getting involved in our community. Even during this COVID-19 crisis, we've made sure that people know we're here, know we're advocating for them. My campaign staff and I have volunteered with organizations like Connecting Kids with Meals, where we provide food for school children who normally receive lunches through school, but because they're not in school, are not being able to get the free or reduced cost lunches that they normally receive. So we've handed out meals to these children. We've provided information for parents, for small businesses, for individuals trying to file for unemployment, and we're listening. We're actually going out into the community and we're listening to individuals to ensure that their voices are heard and that they know that we are advocating for Northwest Ohio. Because ultimately, my goal is when I go down to Washington, I want to ensure that we can get the best deal from Northwest Ohio. I want to have Northwest Ohio as the pinnacle point here for our campaign, and that's what we're doing. We're putting Northwest Ohio first.
Ms. Rubando, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jaden. I truly appreciate it. The work you're doing has been fantastic. So keep up the amazing work. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy.